Hi everyone, this is Sam with EV Times again. Glad that you could join us. Today in the program we have Matt Teske. He is the CEO and founder of Chargeway. They make finding electric vehicle charging stations easier. I had a chance to use their app earlier this week, and it's great. It's really easy to use. I found a few charging stations in my area, so I would highly recommend using the app. We're going to see if we can get Matt on here with us in just a moment. Real quick, I'll just tell you a little bit about what EV Times is all about. So we do live Instagram interviews with industry professionals in the electric vehicle industry. So this can cover the whole gamut. This can be anyone involved with the car makers, software, hardware, YouTubers, really anything, as long as it falls under the umbrella of electric vehicles. So let's see if we can get Matt here on the program with us here. Real quick, we'll invite that goes through. Usually it just takes a moment for everything to get connected, so we'll wait here just a moment and see if this goes through. So to tell you a little bit about what EV Times is about, currently we're doing live Instagram interviews. Down the line we hope to expand into in-person interviews, and that could be a wonderful future for us. So let's see if Matt can get on with us here. Usually it takes a moment for this to happen, so bear with me while we get this technical thing going here. Thank you for everyone that has joined us so far. We're just waiting for Matt to join us here. Matt Teske is the CEO and founder of Chargeway, and they make finding electric vehicle charging stations a lot easier. Let's see here. Hello, thank you for joining. Okay. I wonder if there is any easier way to do this. Okay, looks like we've got Matt on now. Hi, Matt.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Great. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Everyone, this is Matt Teske. He is the CEO with Chargeway. They make finding electric vehicle charging stations easier. So enough of me talking. Matt, just tell us a little bit about Chargeway.
Yeah, so Chargeway started out basically with my own experiences with owning an EV and wanting to know more effectively, how do you find charging if you've made a mistake? Because that's what happened with me. So 9 years ago when my family, we got our first EV, I made the phone calls to a resort we're staying at saying, yeah, EV charging. They said yes, we showed up. And long story short is they walked us over to a wooden shed that had an electrical outlet. And they said, there's your EV charging. And I said, oh boy, that's not going to work. So that was kind of the moment I thought, is this really this confusing for people? And again, this is a decade ago now. And what we realized, I did some research into it. That night at dinner, my wife kind of prompted the conversation for understanding what Chargeway needed to be in the long run, which was, how are average people going to do this? How are people going to navigate this? And so I have a background in automotive branding and communications, and I thought, is the storytelling here wrong? Is the messaging wrong? How do we explain this? And went on researching a lot of things in the energy sector with networks and talking to people in the space, really wanting to be a sponge and absorb what was happening. And what I realized was people understand cars, but we're asking them to use a new fuel. And that was really not as easy as just going to the gas station and getting regular. There's a lot of details you have to know to make sure your fill up with electricity goes smoothly. And we wanted to simplify that because we realized it was complicated. So that was kind of the inception of what needed to be communicated, and Chargeway became the solution around how we do that easily for people.
Mm-hmm. So I had a chance to use your app earlier this week, and it's awesome. It's very easy to use, and I found some stations in my area. And I also noticed on your profile that you have these kind of big displays. Can you tell me more about what those are and where those are located?
Yeah, so what we found, so looking at the ecosystem of who needs to understand how charging works, there's a lot of stakeholders and players involved. There's the automakers, there are charging networks, there are utility companies, and there are drivers, obviously. So we wanted to make sure that if you were using Chargeway, it was a connected ecosystem. You weren't having to bounce around to different ideas of how to understand charging if you were at a dealership compared to going to a utility website. And so the kiosk that you're talking about, we call it the Chargeway Beacon. It's kind of it's a 6-foot tall version of our smartphone app, essentially. And it is placed into dealership showrooms, and it's tailored to that brand of vehicle. So if you're in a Volkswagen showroom, it only shows you Volkswagen EVs and how Volkswagens work for plugging in and charging. If you're at a Chevy showroom, same thing. And so it's a way to cater to the auto sector and help the dealers both be educated and have a tool on how to explain charging more easily for their cars. And in turn, it guides people into an experience with Chargeway that is easier for people to have as a connected experience, from research to test driving to purchase and into ownership. So the Beacon is just one piece of our software ecosystem.
Well, that leads me right into my next question, actually, very nicely, which is, what is this barrier to electric vehicle adoption?
I think the biggest thing that we found in our research and talking to people and just trying to understand what people are most confused about is the biggest barrier from an educational perspective appears to be just the basic understanding of electricity as a fuel choice. And most people simply don't understand that. And partly because we have decades of conditioning that gas-powered cars are what people understand, and the word gas is the other product. That's the other thing that you need to make a gas car function, is the gas. So if you're removing the gas, people kind of perceive that cars are useless. They become just gigantic paperweights with wheels. And so we found that the messaging around the other product, which is the fuel, really needed to be addressed. And because the product people have used forever is called regular or premium, and it takes 5 minutes, and most people don't necessarily know how a combustion engine works, we really focused on the fact that the barrier appears to be trusting that new fuel type in the same way that people have trusted gasoline for a century. And we wanted to make sure that if you're making that switch, it doesn't feel like you have to go from something that's simple to something that's difficult.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sure. So where you're at now seems to be very, great. So what is like kind of the next couple of steps for Chargeway?
Well, the biggest thing for us, obviously, was making sure that we were on the right track with how we positioned how to explain charging. And we wanted to make sure that through testing and pilot programs, we were getting a lot of data back to know that we weren't missing any steps and pieces. Because it's one thing to want to simplify something, it's another thing to actually do it effectively. And we wanted to make sure that we were addressing all the questions that might come from both drivers as well as the industry, whether that's an automotive OEM or a utility or a network. And so where we're at right now is we have a lot of programs we have with utility companies around the US that are using our Chargeway Beacon platform for the large kiosk to engage with the public and work with local dealerships on how to explain that as a utility, they are a fuel provider. And really, that's kind of the first step of starting that conversation on localized levels, because for the most part, EV conversations, they do happen regionally. If you happen to buy an EV and you're living in a particular town, chances are if you have a house with a garage or a driveway, you're going to fill up with your utility 90 to 95% of the time. So a lot of these conversations, although it's a national discussion, the experience oftentimes is very localized for drivers. And so we've been able to test our solution in Oregon, Washington, Texas, and Virginia, most recently California and Michigan. And what we're finding is that no matter where we go geographically, the solution is working. And so the next step for us is to take our software to the next level for what we can offer both drivers and our partners that are in the energy and auto sectors. So more details for information about how your particular car is charging, real-time information about your car, and more details about public stations as well. But really trying to create a user experience that is very tailored to each particular person, because if you're driving an EV and you charge at home most of the time, that's different than if you live in an apartment and have to go find your charging. And we want our platform to really address both those things very effectively. So that's really the next step for us.
Yeah. And seems like there's a lot of apps out there to help you find a plug, but what makes Chargeway different from those?
I think the biggest thing is that we aren't just showing you pins on a map and saying, hey, look, charging is here. Because it's one thing to have a map that has a lot of pins on it saying, oh, wow, there is a lot of charging out there. But it's not uniform in the sense that at each of those pins, it's always the same experience. It might have a different plug type, a different network, or a different power level offered at those locations. And as a driver, you want to know what meets your needs, not just universally, hey, world, there's charging here. Figure it out on your own terms for how it works for you. So for Chargeway, the idea was to say, okay, if we have to educate people on how they can fill up, what do they need to know? And the basic elements of that are, you need to know the plug type that's there works for your car. Number one, can you connect to the fuel? And then number two is for charging, it's not like gasoline where the fill up is uniform with a liquid. You might have a different power level you're connected to. or your vehicle might accept different power levels compared to other cars. And so we wanted to make sure that was very transparent inside of the Chargeway mobile app, so that if you drive a Volkswagen ID4, for example, you will see green stations on the map, and you'll see the numbers on the map that identify the maximum power level at that station. So you'll know, based on those power levels, I'll have a different fill-up experience based on the station I might choose. And then if you happen to be a multi-vehicle family, right there in the Chargeway app, you can switch to your other vehicle. And let's say that's a Tesla Model 3. All the pins on the map will change, and you will see red pins on the map because it's a different plug type. And you'll go to red stations with your Tesla, but similarly, you'll see power levels right on the map. So it's really a way to get through all the jargon that is oftentimes based in engineering terminology, and also visualize it in a way that people can appreciate how it meets their needs as a driver. So if you want a faster fill up, you go to the higher number and you'll have a faster fill up, and we identify that right on the map. And so it really just cuts through a lot of the chaos that most EV drivers, if not all, will have to navigate.
Okay, so it sounds to me like it's very personalized, very simple. You know, you just put in a few pieces of information and then the app kind of does all the work for you. Right? That's
exactly it. Yeah, we want, and you said it very well. I mean, that's it, is we wanted to really, there's a lot of thinking involved when you're buying an EV to navigate all the things that will and won't work for you, and then how it will work for your fill-up experience. So instead of making it very complicated, as it seems to be through a lot of other platforms, we wanted to create a user interface that was very transparent to your needs in particular. So once you add your EV to the Chargeway mobile app, it automatically tailors that charging map you see to just you and your car. There is no other, you're not going to see anything that won't work for you. So you don't have to weed through the mess. You just know it's going to work for you. And then on top of that, we have a charge time estimator that really helps educate you on what those numbers mean that you see on the map for your fill-ups. Is you can show how much, you can choose how much range you have left on your battery, and then go through different power levels to really see how it's going to impact your wait time. And so that allows you to know how to navigate that map more effectively. You can understand and appreciate how charging levels impact, how your wait will be. And then lastly, it's the trip planner. It does all the thinking for you. You just tell it where you want to go, add the speed you want to drive, and what the temperature might be outside, so we can take into into account what impacts range, and then have a very easy trip planner where it suggests where you got to stop and estimates how long it'll be at each one. So simplifying all the hard stuff. That's really the goal of Chargeway.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to ask something a little bit of, maybe even an existential question, maybe, but what, in your own words, what do you think the next technology is going to be for electric vehicles?
It's very existential.
Yeah.
I think, if I had to be honest, I think there's two pieces at play all the time in EV development, which is what's happening on the charging side. Are we able to produce stations that provide a lot of power? But on the other side of that conversation is what's happening with the battery technology. And so I think that in time, what we'll see is the battery technology continues to improve, and it is improving on a pretty regular basis year to year. I think if we can start showing we can improve energy density in battery packs, maybe if solid state batteries truly come to market that alleviate some of the issues we're seeing with lithium ion batteries, whether it's related to degradation or how much stress the battery cell can take, I think that will have a profound impact on usability away from home. So I think really, to me, it's where do we see the innovations happening with the battery tech? Because frankly, I think that 50%, if we're talking the United States, 50% of the US has a home with a garage or a driveway, and most of their fill-ups will be at home. And so we really need to consider the use cases in those ways. And all the EVs in the market today really do accommodate a lot of those drivers. So I think that battery tech will really play a big role in what we see come down the line. But in the long run, we still need to then identify and differentiate how home charging works compared to charging away from home, and those options for fast and maybe not so fast charging.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, batteries are one of the most important things for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, those are my questions for the day, and I'm just so thankful. I know you're probably a very busy person, so I appreciate your time. Yeah. Thank you for coming on with us today, and so thank you so much, and we'll talk to you in the future. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Thanks.